This episode of The Final Jump Shot is sponsored by First Horizon Bank in Pocahontas, Arkansas. Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. The schools may be gone, but the legends live forever. Welcome to the Final Jump Shot podcast. Here's your host, Marcus Carlton.
Welcome back to another episode of the Final Jump Shot podcast. Apologize for everybody. I had to take an extended break. The day job kind of got in the way, and I had to be out of town for a few days for work. But I'm back here now and getting in my zone and working on several more episodes, including we're going to step outside of Northeast Arkansas for a couple of episodes coming up. I think everybody's going to enjoy those greatly. But first, we're gonna go default here. We're gonna go comfort zone. We're gonna go back to my hometown, Biggers-Reyno, talk more Buffalo basketball history. I got a chance recently to sit down with more members of my family, some cousins to be specific, all three Morrow brothers, Jerry, JC, and Ralph, or as most people know him, Rooster. Three brothers, one family, three all-state basketball players. And in addition to suiting up for the Buffaloes, two of the three brothers actually coached at Biggers-Reyno, including the oldest brother coaching the youngest. We'll talk about how that went and how interesting things could get with the family dynamic there. Not only that, Jerry and Ralph both had the opportunity to coach their sons, who also played for Biggers-Reyno. And lastly, I can't leave this out either. Ralph was my coach. So sit back and relax as we visit with Jerry, JC, and Ralph, the Morrow brothers from Biggers-Reyno. Well, sitting here today with the three Morrow brothers, Biggers-Reyno legends in basketball, and my family. So I'm a little biased on this one, and but it's my podcast, and I can do that. So I got Jerry and JC and Ralph Lynn with us. Jerry, tell us what year you graduated and what year you made All-State.
I graduated in 1962 and I made All-State in 1961.
Jay?
I graduated in 1965 and I made All-State in 1964.
All right, Ralph?
Graduation 1980, All-State 1980.
So 2 junior years and a senior year, and then a unique piece to the story that, you know, all of the home folks are going to know this, but for the people outside of Biggers-Reyno listening, you know, not only did all three of you play at Biggers-Reyno and make All-State, but Ralph and Jerry, you guys both coached there, and to take it a step deeper, Jerry, you coached Ralph when he played.
I coached Ralph when he played, and it was a pleasure to do that.
So how
Wait a minute, it was a pleasure for him to do that.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't a pleasure for me.
Well, I was going to expand on that a little bit, and I was going to ask who the pleasure was for. But kidding aside, how did that work?
Let me answer that.
Yeah.
Let me answer.
All right.
I rode to school with Jerry a lot, and I rode home from school with Jerry a lot. And he took me rabbit hunting, he took me duck hunting. I mean, we were together a bunch. When we were at school and in practice, it was all business, and let's, instruct and correct and teach and try to make you the best player that you can be. But never one time, and I played for Jerry 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Never one time out of school, when we wasn't in basketball, did he try to get on me or correct me. He separated it. Now, I don't know how he done that, but he did. When we were at school, he was a coach and I was a player. When we were home, we were brothers. And that meant a bunch.
Yeah. Jay, you're watching this from a distance when Ralph's playing and Jerry's coaching. What's the perspective that you saw? Because you had a unique view on it because you had big brother coaching little brother, and I don't know, were you ever kind of caught in the middle, or was it just sitting back and watch?
Well, yes, I was caught in the middle. I coached boys at Naylor that year, and we went down to Biggers, and I had a decent team. They weren't great, but they were decent. And we went down there. I think it was Ralph's senior year, and they mopped us completely off the basketball court. I didn't know anybody could score that many points against my team, but they did.
Yeah. We scored 102.
Oh, wow.
I think it's the only time we ever scored 100 when I played.
You don't have to rub it in.
But Ralph really wanted to play that game. You know, a lot of times he didn't score as much as he could have, but in that game he wanted to score. And he did. I don't know how many points he got, but he got a bunch.
Was that the game we played down at Biggers and it snowed?
On the afternoon?
Anyway, forecast for snow that night, and we came down there and played at 2 o'clock in the afternoon or something. In order to go ahead and be able to play and not have to worry about driving back and forth.
No, that wasn't my senior year. That was my junior year.
Was that your
Charlie was still playing.
Yeah, Charlie was still playing.
Was still playing. Our nephew was still playing.
Wow.
Yeah.
But, I was caught.
Yeah.
In between.
I never lost to Naylor. We played them 2 or 3 times during. I never lost to Naylor.
We beat Biggers one year when David was coaching.
Yeah.
We beat him that year, but that's the only year I think we ever beat Biggers from Naylor.
So I want to back up, Jerry. I want to talk about when you were playing at Biggers. First off, remind me, who was your coach?
Lynn Garner.
Okay.
Yeah, Lynn Garner coached me.
And then some of your teammates. Who?
Lonnie Reisenhoover, Jim Haygood, Carl Lamb, and Donnie Roberts.
Okay.
Started my junior year, and me and Jim Haygood, Jim Omer, James Parrish, and Donald Hicks were the 5 starters. And back then, they didn't do you didn't get to have to rest back when I played. If you were a starter, if you didn't get 20 ahead or 20 behind, you usually played the whole game.
So what are some of from your playing days, what were some of your favorite memories?
The first game I ever gone to, we lived in St. Louis. We never went to ball games or anything. And we moved back down here. We moved back down here, and I started in the 8th grade. Well, I was bigger than everybody else in the 8th grade. They're a little taller. Yeah. And I wasn't any good. I was just out there, but Teddy Kasinger and Lonnie Reisenhoover were good. And me and Carl Lamb and Donnie Roberts, we were just out there catching the ball. And I can remember we played a 1-3-1, and I played the right-hand side over. And that game, I stole the ball twice, and I took off down there. The first time I missed my layup, and the next time I made it. And that may be the happiest I've ever been in my life when I made that layup. It just thrilled me. We had never beat Viola. In fact, when I was in the 8th grade, that year we were talking about, that I started in the first game I ever played, we went to the finals. Mammoth Springs had the best team, supposedly. They were seeded number 1, but we beat them in the semifinals, and we had Viola in the finals, and it come a big snow, and we didn't get to play for about a week. Well, we run back up there and played Viola, and they beat us in the finals. And we had never beat them. 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade, and then in my 11th grade year, we were playing them in the finals, and we beat them. That's the first time we ever beat them, and they probably had the best team in the state, to tell you the truth. But, Marcus, when we beat them, we didn't even know there was a state tournament. We had never been to the state tournament. From 8th grade through up, Biggers always went to the district tournament. We were big on winning the county, but we never won the district. After we won that district, though, year in and year out, till Biggers-Reyno closed, they were a threat to win that district tournament because they come back. We got cheated out of it the next year. referee that refereed the game was from Mount Pleasant, and he cheated. He just cheated us out of the game. I was in the middle of the game. I was running down the court. I was just going across the lane, and Irvin Mosier runs up and bumps me and falls, and that referee called offensive foul on me. I get the ball on the basket and jump up to shoot a free shot. They come across both arms. The ball goes, if they'd hit the ball wouldn't went up in the air. Yeah. But it come right across both arms. The ball popped up and it come down, hit me on the toe and went out of it. And then they pushed Jim Haygood out. Jim Haygood rebounds the ball with about 10 seconds to go, and they push him out of bounds, and they call him out of bounds. And then, Marcus, I go to Arkansas College to apply for a scholarship there. And guess who drives up? Fred Lamb, the point guard for Mount Pleasant, and that referee. He's in the car with him.
Oh, man.
And back when Jerry and JC played, if you didn't win the district tournament, you didn't advance.
You didn't get to go.
Yeah.
You was out of
it. Top 2 or top 4. You didn't win, you was out.
Yeah, you either won the district tournament or you went home.
You went home.
But as Uncle John used to say, you put the uniforms in the mothballs.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. I don't tell you how many times I put, boys ain't mothball their uniform.
Yeah. I know for me, the losses stick with me more than the wins do.
I remember, to tell you the truth, we didn't have a lot of losses.
I wouldn't know what that's like. So,
my sophomore year, we lost 12 games. I think the only team around that could beat us that we played was Sloan Hendricks. So my junior year, I think we lost about 3 or 4 games, and we lost about 3 or 4 games my senior year, and we won the rest of them.
Running through postseason tournaments, going through district and going to state, what sticks out to you about that run?
Well, like I said, my junior year, Biggers had never won a district tournament while I was around. So when we won the district tournament, we didn't even know you went to the state. And we went to the state that year. We won 1 game, and then we got beat in a close game in our second game. And my senior year, we got beat 1 point in finals of the district.
Do you remember in that state tournament game who it was that beat y'all?
I don't remember. I know who we beat. Let's see, who was it we beat? I can't. The team we beat, I can't remember who it was. I should have thought of that.
That's all right.
But anyway, the team we beat when I was a senior, when I was a coach, when that guy coached his last year at that team, we beat him in the state.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And he retired after that. I said, where was that? Down around Palestine.
Palestine, okay.
Yeah, it's Palestine. We beat Palestine the first game, then I can't remember who beat us in that next game.
Jay?
Yes.
What's some of your favorite memories from playing as a Buffalo?
Well, of course, I always liked playing in the state tournaments. But one of the funniest things that ever happened to me in playing, Coach Garner was the coach when I was in the 7th through the 9th grade. And he came to the dressing room with us one morning, and he wanted to know if we wanted to go to Newport and play in the junior high tournament. Oh, yeah, Coach. He knew what we was going to say because we liked playing. But anyway, we went down there to Newport to play, and I don't know what happened, but at halftime, of course, they jumped the ball that time at the beginning of each quarter.
Right.
Well, we went in the dressing room and came out, and at halftime, whoever was jumping center, and I couldn't tell you who it was, tipped the ball, and it came to me, and I took off with it, but I went the wrong direction. And about the time I got in the middle of the lane, I realized I was going the wrong direction, and I stopped and picked up the ball, and the referees called 3 seconds on me in the lane.
On the other end.
On the wrong end.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
They might have called 10 seconds, not getting it back, but I think they called 3 seconds in the lane on me. But that was one of the funniest things that ever happened to me.
So who were some of your teammates when you played?
I had some of the same teammates that Jerry had. I had Jim Ulmer, Jim Foster, James Parrish, and Bill Pritchard, and I started when I was in the 10th grade. Mm-hmm. And let me tell you something. Those first 3 guys that I mentioned could put the big D on you.
Yeah.
And we played in I think it was the finals of the district tournament that year. It was either finals or semifinals, and we played Salem. And they had Jim Haney, and they had a big old red-headed Moody boy.
Moody.
That was about 6'4", 6'5", something like that. We went in at halftime 11 points down. And they had a good team.
You had 4 fouls.
Yeah. And anyway... when we went back out there, Jim and Puny Parrish is what we called him. Went out there and we went to putting the D on them. Wound up beating them, 4 or 5 points? It was a close game. And that's probably one of the major games I ever played in, other than in the state tournament.
So talk a little bit about that state tournament.
Well, in 63, we went down and we won the first game. Mm-hmm. That's the same group that I was talking about just a few minutes ago. And then in 64, Lake Hamilton, I believe it was, beat us in the second game. Now, we came back the next year in 64 and won the district. We went down. We went to the semifinals. Final Four, whatever you want to call it. At that time, we didn't know Final Four because they hadn't come up with that. But anyway, we went to the Final Four, and we were laying around resting in the motel room. And one of the guys that never did play hardly any jerked a pillow out from underneath Donnie Myers' neck and popped a crick in his neck. He was our starting point guard that year. And he could play 3 or 4 minutes, and then he'd have to go out and rest. Well, while he was out there, we could maintain a lead or catch back up. When the sub came back in, we'd fool around and we'd get behind 3 or 4 points. And I will go to my grave believing, had that not happened, we might not have won the state, but we would have played in the finals of the state tournament.
All right, your turn.
Oh, gosh. Playing at Biggers, if you've not been there, it's hard to explain. And we were good when I was in the 9th grade. Well, we were good when I was in 8th grade. We won the district tournament 8th and 9th grade. Sophomore year, we were just okay and had a shot that year to get to the finals and didn't make it. And then we got beat in the semifinals when I was a junior. We won it when I was a senior. We beat Overbend in the finals and went to the state tournament. But my deal was, I wasn't old enough. Jerry graduated 62, JC graduated 65. I was born in 61. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't old enough to watch them play in high school, but I heard the stories. But I did see them play a lot of independent basketball. Back then, they played independent basketball after it was over, and they would drag me to the games with them to watch them play.
Now, we didn't drag you.
No,
you had to go.
Yeah.
I never did get there, but I always wanted to be as good as these two. but I didn't make it. But that motivated me. We all wore 52. Jerry wore 52. JC wore 52. I wore 52.
I wore 52 because Jerry was my hero.
Well, it's kind of the same thing.
And still is.
We may get emotional before this is over.
Sorry.
But it just is what it is. But that's right. I wanted to be like these guys.
Yeah.
I wanted to play like these guys. And I wanted people to know that I was given everything that I had. And that's what I tried to do. But I'm going to tell you, Jerry was hard. He was hard. He was good.
Yeah.
Great strategist. I mean, he could game plan and do all kinds of things that lots of people nowadays, they just put kids out there and let them play. But you know, I can remember when we had a game at Biggers, everybody came. Not just parents, not just grandparents, the whole towns. Everybody showed up at the gym.
It would have been a good time to rob the bank.
It would have been a good time to rob anything. But everybody showed up, and they just didn't come and sit and talk like you go now to ball games. You see people setting up the bleachers and there's this and that. No, they came to watch the ball game and to be an integral part of what was going on. And that makes a big difference, y'all. You're out there playing in a close game, and you got your fans over here just going nuts. It makes a huge difference. But we got beat when I was a senior in the finals of the regional tournament by Tyronza.
Yeah.
And they were good. But I was in foul trouble that whole game. And Jimmy Eddington was a sophomore, and he played in my spot. And Jimmy was a good player, even as a sophomore. He was a good player. And they wound up beating us 3 or 4 points, and we had to play Parkdale in the first round.
And they won the overall.
The year before.
Wow.
They won the overall state tournament back when they had it. They won Class B, which is what it was back then, and then they went and they won the overall state tournament against all classifications. They had about all of them back.
And just to clarify on that, what Ralph was talking about here, the overall, it doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah.
But that's when you took the best of the best and lined them up.
Yeah,
and
every state tournament champion in every classification went to Conway and UCA and played an overall state tournament, and they had won it the year before. And that year they beat us. They won a state tournament, and I went down and watched them play in the overall. They played West Memphis. You might remember these names: Michael Cage, Keith Lee, Aaron Price. When they were in the midst of that 60-whatever game winning streak that they had. And at halftime, Parkdale was up 5.
Wow.
Now, they wound up getting beat 8 or 10, but not bad. But we went to Monticello and played and got beat in the state tournament. But there's nothing like playing for your hometown and people being behind you, you know, like our people were. You just, if you've never experienced, you just can't imagine the feeling that you have. We played in the finals of the district tournament when I was a senior. It was at Sloan Hendricks.
Yeah.
In their old gym, you couldn't even get out of bounds to throw the ball in. There's so many people there. It was full of people standing around the sidelines and the end lines. I mean, people had to step apart for you to get out of bounds and throw the ball in. Wow. It was remarkable. And by the way, I got 40 that night. just to clarify.
I can remember
18 out of 18 free shots.
That's right.
I can remember when we played in that old gym down there at Biggers. Of course, that's the only place Jerry and I ever played. Down in the corner, there was a little section about 10 feet wide that all the men would get down in that corner, along with Billy Luter, and he was from Corning, but he came and watched.
He was a Biggers graduate.
He was a Biggers graduate, and he came and watched. I guess he probably watched every game that Jerry and I ever played. And those men would get down there in the corner, and when you get down on that end of the floor, you got all kinds of information and instructions from those guys.
Probably smoking, half of them.
Well, I don't know whether they let them smoke inside the gym or not. But I think maybe they had to go out in the hallway if they was going to smoke.
So it just took a little longer for the smoke to get into the gym.
Yeah.
Well, I can remember y'all in the old gym, they had those ashtrays that set up 3 or 4 feet high sitting in the bleachers.
Yeah.
When I was a kid.
Yeah, you're right about that. They may have smoked inside. I don't
They had
remember.
those big metal ashtrays that come up. And
I remember Earl Ulmer stood
He leaned on the post.
on one end of the court. He didn't get down there with the other men. He'd get down there kind of in the middle where the entrance was, or one of the entrances. And he stood there and he would just fight the whole game when they were playing. You could just see him up there and he'd twist and turn, and it was comical to watch him, but now he was a fan.
Yeah.
Let me say this before I forget it. And I know part of this podcast is about the schools that were there and aren't there anymore, like Biggers and Blackrock and Clover Bend and Lynn and Wilford and Evening Shade and all of them that they are. It's not like it is now. Probably the farthest drive we had was Evening Shade, maybe Mammoth Springs, a little over an hour. But people knew people. Mm-hmm. People from Biggers knew people from Black Rock, and people from Biggers knew people from Lynn and Strawberry and all. I mean, and they were buddies. They were friends.
He had a big time. Yeah.
But when the ball game started, they were no longer friends. As soon as it was over, win or lose, it's right back to being the way you was. And I don't think we have that now with all these little schools, small schools gone. I don't think we have that now, because when you get on a bus at Corning and you drive to EPC or some of these places, you don't have that camaraderie between towns that you used to have. We knew all the coaches. The coaches from the other schools knew all of us. I mean, it was a unique time.
Well, and I've tried to, I've got buddies that we'll get together and we'll watch games at West Side or Brooklyn or Valley View, wherever. And none of them, they all graduated from places like that, 3, 4, 5A schools. Yeah. And, I started explaining to them, where I grew up, where I graduated, and just how it was different. And it's like I'm speaking to them in a foreign language. Yeah. They don't understand that, yes, it was basketball, but at the same time, that was the highlight of everybody's
week. It was live.
Yeah, it was. It really was, because, I know even when I was growing up, if you didn't play basketball, everybody kind of looked at you like, why aren't you playing?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And when I was in school, everybody played basketball. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted to be, boys and girls, wanted to be on the basketball teams. Now, a lot of them knew that they weren't very good. They knew that they weren't going to get to, they knew they wasn't going to get to play very much, but they didn't care. They wanted to be a part of what you were doing. And nowadays it's not just well, I want to be on a basketball team, but if I'm going to be on a basketball team, I want to play. Mm-hmm. And it's not even, well, if I'm going to play, I want to start. Now everybody wants to be the man or the woman. Mm-hmm. And no, it don't work that way.
No, you got 5 slots and 1 ball. So, that's right. That's the way you have to make it work. And I always felt like, and of course, I probably was at a lot of your games, Ralph, but I wasn't old enough to remember it. But, from the stories I've heard, it always felt like to me that Biggers-Reyno might not have been the most athletic team, but we were probably going to be the smartest team on the floor.
And the most well prepared.
Yeah.
And the hardest working.
Hard getting after it, hustling.
What is it, Herschel or Hoss or somebody called it the Biggers Swarm?
Yeah.
Kind of like Nolan Richardson's 40 Minutes of Hell. Yeah. It was. I've heard the Biggers Swarm. I've heard lots of people say that.
That's awesome. I'd never heard that, but that
really,
I've never heard the Biggers Swarm.
Biggers Swarm. That's what they called it.
And okay, so compare it. I don't feel like you can compare today's game to when y'all. I don't know that you can even compare it to when I played. But
the 3-point line has changed the game.
Yeah.
The 3-point line has changed the game. And some of it is for the better and some of it's for the worse.
Yeah, I agree.
It's helped the little guy a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the shot clock in Arkansas has made a big difference,
that shot clock makes a big difference, and I like it.
I do, too, now.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I didn't at first, but I've come around on that.
I went up to watch Donovan play, and they didn't have the shot clock.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one team would hold the ball for a minute, passing it around, trying to get a shot.
Yeah.
And
Donovan doesn't hold it very long.
No, they won't hold it very long. But to kind of go on that, back before the shot clock came in and even before the 3-point line came in, Jerry and Jay, especially when you guys played, if you got a 5, 6, 7 point lead in the fourth quarter,
is over.
You can just hold the ball.
Especially we can handle the ball.
Yeah. If you can handle the ball and your opponent didn't play really good defense, the game was over.
And if you shot at your dad and mom and kick your rear end when you got home.
After coach got you on the sideline. Yeah. But to think about that, and, we always I've always heard about these teams all my life. Biggers-Reyno was so good, so good, so good. And most people's immediate mind goes to the offensive side of it. But back in that day when you didn't have a shot clock, and you guys correct me, Jerry and Jay, you correct me, when you played, there was no possession arrow. If there was a tie ball, you jumped it, right?
You jumped it.
So with no possession arrow, if you've got the ball, you could, and had a lead, you could basically take all the air out of the ball and just sit on it.
Yeah.
Unless
we did that quite a bit.
Yeah, we did that, but a lot of teams didn't.
Well, and if you're behind and you want to get back in the game, you had to play really good defense to be able to get the ball back.
If the other team could handle the ball, you had to foul.
And hope they missed.
Yeah.
Hope they missed.
We done that when I was a senior against Clover Bend in the finals. We had a 3 or 4 point lead and it got down under 4 minutes to go, and we just took it out and held it. And I remember the story. It's kind of funny. Jerry and Herschel Bryant and Bill McCurley and Hoss Jones were down at the NEA tournament, and I was sitting up there with them. I thought I was a big shot sitting with that crew, but they're talking about the game, and this was a year later after we'd won it. They're talking about the game, and I shot 18 free throws that game and made all of them. And Herschel Bryant, we were playing Hoss Jones, and Herschel Bryant said, Hoss, why didn't you foul somebody besides Rooster at the end of that game? And Hoss said, well, hell, he's the only one that had the ball. We didn't have any choice. We had to foul it.
So I remember a story when Ralph was playing about an NEA game against Clover Bend. I believe double overtime game in the NEA.
Semifinals.
Okay. Y'all tell the story on that game, whichever one of y'all wants to tell it.
Well, we're playing them in the finals of the NEA, and Caraway had beaten Marmaduke earlier that morning, so Caraway had gotten to the finals, and we're playing them.
Playing Clover Bend, right?
We're playing Clover Bend.
Was Hoss coaching there?
Hoss was coaching, yeah. And the game's close, nip and tuck, and we started fouling out.
Mm-hmm.
We had kids that started fouling out, and I remember they were playing man-to-man, and Hoss's man-to-man was pretty much straight up, you guard your man, and everybody else is on their own. Mm-hmm. And in the final overtime, we've got the ball down to, with not a lot of time left, and I take my guy to the left and spin and go to the right and get a layup, but semi-contested layup, and missed it.
Mm.
And then we had to foul, and they made free throws, and they wound up beating us.
But he'd hit a free shot, a jump shot, a free shot tied up.
In regulation. Yeah, they were shooting free throws up, too, with 6 seconds to go when I got the rebound and took it down the floor and hit a jump shot at the free throw line to tie it up. But they wound up beating us. And then they got beaten in the finals by Caraway. But that today, in today's slang, that would be called an instant classic.
Yeah. Well, from the stories that I've heard all my life, all three of y'all played in quite a few instant classics, and I tried to do some research and stuff, and there's just not any records online of these old games, and I'm running into that not just with Biggers, but a lot of these small schools. And I guess that's just one of the disadvantages of being small is that there's a limited supply of like old newspaper articles and stuff. Thankfully, Lindsey Ringo's been posting a lot of stuff on social media lately, and that's been really helping me a lot.
And how he kept them is what I want to know.
Yeah, I mean, because
who kept them for him?
Yeah, because there's some really good stuff in there that it's probably stories that I knew once upon a time, but I'd forgotten. But it just kind of speaks to the legacy of how important basketball was to Biggers-Reyno, because we're talking about newspaper clippings from, what are we coming up on, 40 years ago, 50 years ago almost?
Well,
40?
61.
Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, so I don't know how old the newspaper was that he posted that had the article about all three of y'all making All-State. But
Virginia said she had that picture somewhere, but I could never remember.
I've got it somewhere. That was in the spring. That picture was taken, and that article was written in the spring of 1980.
Georgianne Parrish.
Georgianne Story. Parrish,
okay.
Wrote it.
Yeah, Georgianne Story did that.
Because she came up to the house and took pictures, but that was in the spring after basketball season was over. But I'll tell you this, Marcus, I got a lot of good instruction at school, but I didn't learn to play at school.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Pickup games.
I learned to play in the shop and outside where it was no blood, no foul. Mm-hmm. You had to be able to handle the ball. You had to be able to hang on to the ball. You had to be able to shoot it in a hurry, because you didn't, somebody's going to knock your head off.
And you had to be tough.
Yeah.
Because that's just the way it was.
Marcus, Ralph mentioned that shop ball. There's been a lot of tears shed out there in that shop at Ralph's house.
Hey, when Bobby JC's son, and Brad Haygood and Chris were little, of course I'm 10 years older, 9 or 10 years older than them. They would come over when they were little to play, and me and Charlie and Lindsay and some of the rest of them would play, and we just beat them guys to death. I mean, because we were bigger and stronger than them, and we just beat them to death. Just absolutely beat them to death. And one of them might leave crying. 2 or 3 minutes, they'd be right back. Yeah. They hadn't had it. They never got enough. Mm-hmm. But they learned to play just like I did out there doing that. And the last time we played, me and Charlie and somebody played Brad and Bob and Chris. Okay, they're about 16 years old. We're about 25. Mm-hmm. We played them there at Mom and Dad's house. And we finally got them beat. But it was a blood bath. We didn't play.
They didn't cry then.
They didn't cry that day.
Yeah.
No, they didn't cry that day. That's the last time I played them three.
Decided you better quit while you was ahead.
I better quit while I was ahead.
Marcus, when we lived down south of town there at Reno on the county line, Jerry and I got out and found us an old telephone pole somewhere. Took the post hole diggers and dug a hole, put that pole up. We got an old tailgate.
Got the tailgate to my grandpa's truck and put it up there.
Yeah.
For a backboard?
For a backboard. And when people would come from town down to our house, which was about 2.5 miles or so, and they'd come for a game, and we had a spot probably 8 or 10 feet around that was beat out where there wasn't any grass, and if it was a little bit damp, it was muddy.
Yeah.
And we'd go out there with that old basketball, and sometimes it'd be cold and that ball would be wet, and the fight was on. And, when they came down there, it wasn't just a game. It was a game to try to win. It didn't make any difference who was on your team. You tried to win. And I think that's what Biggers was always about, when you went out there on the floor, you didn't go out there just to play and have fun.
Yeah.
Because if you get beat, it's not fun. Mm-hmm. It's a whole lot more fun to win than it is to lose. And I went to a baseball game, a Little League baseball game, when Lance Mason was playing over there at Corning. And there were people up there in the bleachers saying, "Oh, it don't make any difference whether you win or lose or not, as long as they're having fun." And I said, let me tell y'all something. It's a whole lot more fun when you win than it is when you get beat. And when you get beat, it's not funny.
Yeah.
Oh, and it was a bunch of ladies, and you know how the mamas are.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times. Now, Angie wasn't like that. She wanted to win.
No, she wasn't.
And I also told him, if it didn't make any difference whether you won or not, why do you keep score?
Yeah. Well, and I think that, you know, I've run into that a couple times with some friends of mine that I played pickup ball with in college and after college, because when I went out there, and it was just a meaningless pickup game on, you know, a Thursday night or whatever, and we're out there, but I'm locked in like I'm still wearing the Buffalo uniform, because if I'm going to spend my time doing this, I don't want to just go out there and just, it's not going to be fun for me if I don't win. And that was instilled in me early on. Yeah. From about the time I could pick up a ball, you know, it was, and it was also put in there. It's like, you know, you go out there, you do the best you can, but if you go out and you get 35 points and you get beat, it's not, you know, you hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
And
well, here's one thing I remember about you, Marcus, when you played for me, when you were senior. And I coached you some in junior high, but when you were senior, when you got on the bus after a game, you wanted to look at the scorebook. But you weren't looking to see how many points you scored. You were looking to see how many points the man you guarded scored. Mm-hmm. That was important to you.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want your guy to get any.
None.
Not one. Mm-mm. And they didn't get very many. and you came to me and you always wanted to guard the best player. When we were going over scouting reports and stuff, and I was telling you, this one does this and this, you'd say, I got him. And it didn't matter if you're 5'8"
on a good day.
On a good day.
Yeah.
And some
That's
of those
when
guys,
you got hair.
Yeah. When I had hair, I was 5'9", but I'm 5'7"
and some of those
now.
guys were 6'2", but it didn't make any difference to you. You wanted the challenge of guarding the best player on the other team. And most of the time, that's who you got. Mm-hmm. And they didn't get much. Boy, they sure did get aggravated with you guarding them.
Well, I might have took a few shortcuts here and there when I was guarding, but, you know, I had learned where I could put my hands when the referees were in certain positions.
And when to bump them.
Yeah.
You don't bump them right out in front of the referee.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard for people to score, Marcus, when they can't get the ball.
Yeah.
And you didn't even like for your guy to have the ball.
No, I didn't want the ball in his hands, because especially if I was guarding one of those big ones, because I knew if he got the ball, I was probably going to have to foul him. Yeah. But if I could keep him from getting it, you know, make somebody else beat us.
That's right.
And that was, you know, and yeah, I didn't want to look at the scorebook for me, because it you know, I could keep up with that on my hands, how many I scored, you know, no more than I shot the ball. But that sense of pride and just wanting to win, because and you guys are all the same way. The winning was the most important thing. I mean, it was nice to get the 20, 25 points a game. But, Jarrett, I mean, would you rather win or score 25 and lose?
I'd rather win.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like we were talking about Ralphling a while ago, wanting to score against Naylor. When we played somebody that wasn't very good, Ralphling might score 10 points, and we'd beat him 30. But he let everybody. When we played somebody that was good, he'd score 30, because the part of it, the others couldn't score that much, and he wanted to win. But he didn't care whether he scored that much when we was playing somebody that wasn't any good.
And my teammates knew that.
Yeah, they knew that.
They looked. They tried to get it to me. They worked really hard to get it to me in big.
But they wanted to win too.
Because they wanted to win.
You mentioned teammates. I think the three of us played on teams with good teammates.
You're right.
Yeah, we all had good teammates. I played with James Gardner, and he was as good a teammate as you'd ever want to be around. And he could play. James Gardner could play.
Yeah, he got 48 in the finals of the district tournament his senior year.
I was going to say, I thought he got 50 that year, but it may have been 48.
I think it's 48. That was the year. The reason I know that is because that was the night Clay was born.
Yeah.
I went to the ball game and watched it. Wilford and I come back. My wife was at Paragould having Clay.
Wow.
And
I got over there.
My teammates, you got theirs, you hadn't got mine yet, was me and Doug Godwin and Danny Walmsley and Terry Darty and Terry Johnson started. Mm-hmm. We were 6'3", 6'3", 6'1", 6 foot, and me. 5'10", maybe. But I played the post. And then we had Jimmy Eddington and Freddie Yarbrough and golly, Lindsay, and several others, but we had a good bunch. We had lots of kids that could play. Doug Godwin could shoot the eyes out of it, and so could Terry Darty.
Yeah.
If we'd had the 3-point line back then, boys, they could shoot it.
Yeah.
And Walmsley was 6 foot, but he was a grown man in the 6th grade. Just a grown man. And the only thing Danny couldn't do was pass. He could not pass, and I've heard Jerry tell him this before. Walmsley, just shoot it. At least we'll have a chance to rebound it. Don't pass it. You don't get fancy.
He could shoot it.
He could shoot it.
Probably the best 8th and 9th grade shooter I had.
Yeah.
He's probably the best 8th and 9th grade when he and Ralph were in the 8th grade. We beat Sloan Hendricks, and they had that
Scott Horrell.
Had Scott Horrell, 6'8" kid that played at the University of Arkansas.
Wow.
And we beat them twice. They hadn't lost a junior high game, and I can't tell you how many years. We beat them at Biggers, and then we beat them in the finals.
No, we beat them in the Sloan Hendricks.
We beat them in the finals.
We did beat them in Sloan Hendricks, and then we beat them in the district.
And then we beat them in the district tournament.
Boys, I forgot to mention Bill and George Pritchard that I played with too. Yeah. They were two good basketball players too.
Yeah, George
didn't either one of them score a whole lot, but they played good defense and they rebounded a lot. And I think they need to be mentioned because they were good teammates.
Some of these names I've heard, some of them I haven't, but the big thing that sticks out to me is that when y'all played and the teammates, and you talk about how good your teammates were, part of that, and you don't see this much now, but those guys knew exactly what they were supposed to do when they were on. They knew their role.
Exactly.
And they didn't try to, if their role was rebound and defend, then that's what they were going to do. And I don't think you see that much more now. Everybody wants to be the guy that scores 30 a game. Yeah. And you don't have the guy that would rather get the rebound and shut down somebody else or take the charge or do the things that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, I
don't know how many points Brad Haygood averaged when he was in high school. I don't know. And Brad was a good player, obviously. Not a great shooter, but a good scorer. Mm-hmm. But I'd almost bet you my next paycheck that half the points he scored in his career were on offensive rebounds. Now, he would go get it when it was shot and put it back in. And
he didn't throw it back out to the 3-point line. No. Somebody else shooted it. Yeah.
No, he got a bunch of rebounds. And Jared, go ahead.
Chris Eddington said on one of his Facebook posts the other day, if Bob had come to Biggers-Reyno when he was a senior, they would have won the state tournament.
Yeah, and probably won it the next year after he was gone. Yeah. They'd sure won it. And we haven't even mentioned some of it. I'm going to tell you, Jerry had some sure enough good teams when he coached at Biggers.
Well, that's where I was headed next, was to talk about, because I know about the 80 team.
Right.
I know about the 82 I believe that was Jimmy Eddington's senior year, right?
Yeah, Jimmy and Darryl Haygood,
yeah,
Freddie Yarwood,
and that
Jimmy
bunch.
Yancey.
Yeah. But what are some of the other really good teams that you coached?
The best team I had was Mike Allison, Tommy Bryant, Carter Rickman, Dennis Eddington, and Jerry Foster. We were 6'2", 6'2", 6'2", 5'10", and 5'10", and them two. One of the 5'10s could jump out. Bryant could jump out of the gym, and Allison was quicker than a cat. And we got beat 1 point in the semifinals of the state tournament.
Wow!
And had a layup.
We were going down the court. With less than 15 seconds to go, and we were going down. We were going to be 3-on-2, and Mike Allison had the ball out front, and he was going down, and instead of going to the right, he went to the left. And Dennis run over him and
trying to get in front of the ball.
He was trying. He run over him, knocked him down, and we got beaten 1 point. But had we gone on them and scored, we'd have won that ball game and been in the finals.
That bunch was good.
That bunch good. Well, they were all big. Every one of those boys had played point guard at some time during their career. Jerry Foster and Dennis played point guard when they were in the 7th grade, and of course Rickman he played point guard when he was in the 7th grade, and of course the rest of them were point guards.
I remember as a kid, Logan Foster and I were big buddies, and Jim, his dad, he would always talk about how good Carter Rickman was.
Yes, Carter was a good player.
He's all-stater.
But all of them boys were good. They could all play, they could all shoot, they could all handle the ball, and Dennis was one heck of a rebounder. So was Rickman and Foster. Foster was probably the most underrated player.
Yeah.
He was 6'2", and he could shoot it and handle it, and he was a good. Jerry Foster started on every team he played on.
Wow!
From the 7th grade through senior high.
Wow. So I didn't realize that. Yeah. I'd heard stories about he was a pretty good ball player, but I didn't realize that.
He was good.
How many boys from Biggers made All-State? Do you know?
Well, I know we three and Carter Rickman. I know he did. And I don't know. I can't think of anybody else right off.
Well, the later years, Brad did.
Yeah.
Did Chad Hovis ever make All-State?
I think so. I think he made All-State. That year after Brad and them graduated, it was just him and Colby left. But I'm pretty sure Chad made All-State that year. Because I remember a game, Williford came over to Biggers, one of the first games of the year, and Chad put up 50.
50, that's right. But now, when we were playing, in order to make All-State, you had to get to the state tournament.
You had to play in the state tournament.
If you didn't play in the state tournament, it didn't matter how good you was. You didn't make All-State. Nowadays, they pick 4 kids, unless it's changed since I got out. They pick 4 kids from each conference to be All-State players. Mm-hmm. No matter whether you win the district or regional or whatever. 4 kids in that conference is going to be All-State, but it used to didn't be that way. If you didn't get there,
if you didn't play in the state tournament, you didn't make
All-State.
Well, it's just like if you didn't win district, you didn't move on.
Well, that's just like Jim Haney when he played at Salem. He was one of the better players in our conference, if not the best.
He's probably the best,
and we wound up beating him in the district tournament over there, and he didn't make All-State.
So
because he didn't get to play in the state tournament.
Well, that leads me to my next question. Best player that we'll go played against first.
I guess the best player, there were 2 players that played for Sloan Hendrick, Jerry Clemens and Leon Jones. Mm-hmm. Leon was a 6'2" guard, and at that time that was outstanding, and Clemens was 6'6". Like I said, they were the best team we played. And by the way, I was talking to Jerry Clemens last year sometime, and he and one of his teammates, and they asked him who the best player they played against, and he said it was me.
Well, there's a mutual respect there. So.
Yeah, he said, yeah. Well, it was funny, back when Clemens and them played, they were in the state tournament. They played in the A state tournament. Mm-hmm. They didn't play we played with Viola and Mammoth Springs and up in there, and they played with Batesville. Black Rock, Lynn, and Sloan Hendricks played at Batesville. And Clements and Jones never did get to go to state because Batesville would beat them.
Huh. Jay, who's the best you ever had to play against?
Probably the best team I ever played against was Cave City.
Yeah.
They had Jim Cordell that was about 6'4",
probably
6'4", and he could play. And I can't remember the other boys.
Wooldridge,
had a Wooldridge.
Wooldridge was their guard.
That was a pretty good player. They were probably the best team we played against. However, we got beat by Clover Bend my senior year in the semifinals of the district. Clover Bend was always pretty good.
Jim Haney was probably the best player you ever
Jim
played.
Haney was probably the best player I ever played.
He was later on in years.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he was.
Well, he probably was in high school.
Yeah.
He probably was in high school.
Ralph, I think I know what your answer is going to be.
I think when I was a senior, I think probably the best player that I played against was Scotty Pierce at Clover Bend. Scotty's about 6'4". Shelley Smith's brother over at Corning was a really good player.
You played in a state tournament against that.
Oh, golly. The best player I ever played against was Ronald Claiborne.
Yeah, that's what I was going to guess.
In our conference, it's probably Scotty Pierce, but Ronald Claiborne.
Ronald Claiborne was probably the best one you ever
Best one I ever played against.
He's the best one I ever coached against. And they beat us 6 points.
Was he could play.
Yeah, they beat us 6 points.
And for those listening that are not familiar with that name, it's Parkdale, right?
Yes.
Parkdale Dragons.
Parkdale
Yeah,
Dragons.
Parkdale. He played for
He played for Louisiana Tech or somebody, didn't he?
somewhere.
Can't remember. He wasn't very big.
No,
he might have been 6 foot.
He could jump and shoot.
But
I doubt he's 6 foot. He wasn't much bigger than you, but he could jump.
And they had another kid named Morris. Randolph Morris was a really good player too, but he wasn't Ronald Claiborne.
Well, and this is the same Parkdale team that you guys were talking about earlier that went to the overall.
They won the overall 1 year.
And then I guess the next year was the year they lost to Keith Lee.
They lost to Keith Lee and Cage.
Yeah, Michael, 2 NBA players coming out of West Memphis. And you got a little Class B school with, nobody over 6 foot tall, and they lose to them, 6 points?
They lost 6, 7 points. It was. They had a 5-point lead at halftime, but they just too big for them.
They couldn't stop them.
They couldn't keep them scoring.
Yeah.
They're just too big. But, boy, they were really good. And I can remember them coming out when of course, Jerry had given a scout report on them and stuff for state tournament, and we practiced. And when they come out, Parkdale, they didn't look that good. Yeah. I mean, they just old kids, just old kids like us. But, well, when you tossed it up, they started playing.
Quick, could jump, and could shoot. Claiborne could shoot that thing.
Yeah, we could flat shoot it.
Was that the best team you coached against?
Well, I imagine it is, yeah. I'd say that's probably the best team I coached against is old Claiborne and them.
I think the best team I coached against.
And that's another thing. Where you play the state tournaments make a lot of difference. Mm-hmm. The year Clay had the district the state tournament over here at Southern Baptist, the year Clay and Darrell and Jim Eddington and Freddie Yard, we could have won the state tournament. Because we got beat 6, the team that beat us got beat 6, and and that was probably, I don't know that was the best team I had, but the competition wasn't quite as good. Mm-hmm. Actually, we could have won. We got a bad call, like you always do. Jim Eddington. I had Jim Yancey was at the scores table to check in for him with a minute and a half to go in the half because Jim was bad at foul. He's almost as bad as JC to foul. And anyway, and Jim Eddington goes up and gets a rebound. He turns to go down the court. A guy runs up under him, and he runs over him, and they call a charge on Jim. That made his third foul. Now, and we're up 4 at that time. If they call it the other way, Jim shoots free shots, we're up 6.
Yeah.
And he's got 2 fouls. So, and it all in close games like that, things like that happen.
And that was at Monticello.
That was at Monticello. Every time we went to the state tournament, we played at Monticello.
Yeah.
If we could have played up here in the
Northeast Arkansas somewhere.
Northeast Arkansas, we could have won it.
Yeah. We played at Barton Coliseum the 2 years I was in the state.
Yeah, we did too. We played, and that's more fair.
And when I was in the 10th grade, I never will forget it, that gym floor sat right down in the middle of the whole Coliseum, and it was about 70 feet from the backboard to the background in that thing. And we went out there to warm up, and the first 4 or 5 shots that I took, I didn't even get it to the rim.
It's a good thing you shot outside a lot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You said
but it was dark. The background was dark back there, and it was a different perspective.
Payette beat us. They went to the fight. They had won the state tournament the year before. They had their 2 best players back. Payette beat us 1 or 2 points, and we missed. I think we were 11 out of 12 free shots the first half.
No.
Darrell Agee said when he got up there to shoot a free shot, there was flags way back up there. He didn't know whether to shoot the free shot or salute. But we missed 11 out of 12 free, and we were a pretty good free shot shooting team. And that was that team there: Bill Mason, Darrell Agee, the Johnson boy,
Philip,
and Rick Haygood and Danny Daniels were a pretty good team.
Ringo put that.
Bill Mason was a good player
on Facebook just the other day.
Yeah. But I never will forget. We were playing Cave City. And they had a kid that went to the University of Arkansas, Medcalf. And anyway, he had wrote K-Don Vaughn a letter saying that he was going to be, he was just a sophomore, he was going to be the most valuable player in the district, and they were going to win the district, and he was going to be. I read that letter to our boys. I read that letter to our boys. We played them at Maynard, and we whipped the dog out of him. We whipped the dog out of him. He didn't. In fact, we beat Cave City twice. We beat Cave City when Dan and them were in the 10th grade, and then we beat them again, and Bill Mason and that crew beat them.
I want to jump ahead to when the school closed, and Jerry, I know you guys weren't.
We weren't there yet.
Weren't there, but Ralph was right in the middle of it.
We were involved.
Yeah, but Ralph was still there at the time. Matter of fact, you coached that last year.
Yeah, I did.
And your son was there, Brett, and my younger brother, and Ben Hoggard, and some of those guys. But I remember how I felt when I first got the news that this was it and that it was closing, and I've said it before, and I'll take this to my grave. When it finally became, I guess it sunk in on me that the school was closing. I mean, it felt like I had lost a family member, and I try to explain that to people, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean? It's just a school?" No, it wasn't just a school. It was. This was with the way that my family and y'all's too, we were all involved in the school in one aspect or another, whether it was working there or just being a fan or sitting on the school board or whatever it was more than just a school. It was kind of the heartbeat of that community.
Well, when you lose your school, you're going to lose your community as a whole. It's going to go down. Mm-hmm. It ain't going to get better when you lose your school. There are good things about losing your school, and there are bad things. Athletically, the players getting to play, you lose 5 players, and the mediocre players are not going to get to play.
Yeah.
Now, the real good players, they're going to get to play no matter where you go.
Yeah.
But them mediocre players, they won't get to play. The good thing about the thing, you have music and other things that goes on in the school that where we didn't have any football.
Right.
Kids get to play football, and there were a lot of kids in our class. Richard Luda would have been a great football player, and he was just a mediocre basketball player.
Well, and that is the one thing that I've kind of wondered about over the years because, I remember talking to buddies in college and they're like, man, you didn't play football? And when I would tell them, no, we didn't have football. Yeah. It's like I told them I lived on the moon or something,
Yeah.
They just couldn't understand not having football. And
band, kids get banned and things that you didn't have at the B school that they get a chance to do when they go to a larger school. So there's good things and bad things about it. But I'm like you. I don't know how to put this. Corning will never be my school.
100%. I understand.
It's all right for Biggers to go to Corning, but Corning will never be. Biggers-Reyno is my school.
Yeah.
And I won't ever, when Corning gets beat, I won't feel near as bad as I did when Biggers got beat.
There's no disrespect. It's
just the way it is.
It's just the way it is.
Once a Buffalo, always a Buffalo.
Do you know, here's a tidbit for you. Do you know who made the last basket in Biggers-Reyno's high school gym?
No, I don't.
Derek Byers.
Really?
Derek Byers made a 3-pointer over there in front of the concession stand door from a corner. The last 2 games we played at home, the last year we were in school, we played Cross County, who got beat in the finals of the AA state tournament that year, and Piggott, who had a really good team. Mm-hmm. And that's the last 2 home games we had. And I can't remember which order they were in. I kind of think Piggott might have been the last.
I think Piggott was the last one.
But we beat Cross County, and they were good. Mm-hmm. And then we beat Piggott in the last game, and we beat them. We wound up beating both of them pretty good. And Derek Byers was in the game at the end of the game. We had our subs in, and he was in, and he made the last shot in Biggers-Reyno's gym.
I was there for that last game. I remember being there because my brother was playing.
Yeah.
And, I'm sitting here the whole night. I'm like, and I think I even prayed at one point, like, all right, God, don't let us go out this way. Don't let us go out with an L.
Well, we were behind.
Yeah.
And it was close at halftime.
Yeah.
And those kids, it was Brett and Ben and Derek Addington and Lincoln.
Adam McCandless
and Jones, Eric Jones and that group. And they did. I remember them telling me at halftime, it might have been Brett because he's pretty brash, but he said, Dad, we're not going to lose this game.
Yeah.
We're not going to lose this game. I said, okay.
I was probably more nervous for that game than I was any game I ever played. And it was just because, this was closing the chapter.
Yeah.
And this was, if people remember one game, they're going to remember that last game. And
it was full, too.
Yes, it was.
I was there for that game.
Yeah, it was full.
It was full house. I don't know that I never saw a crowd that big when I played. But everybody came that last night, and then when that last buzzer went off, it hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, it just...
A lot of tears shed that night, even with a win.
Yeah.
We'd won, and we'd won pretty big, but there was lots of tears. I never got the kids out of the gym. They still won't leave.
Yeah. And it's just, and I know I sound like a broken record, but trying to explain that to somebody that went to a 5A school.
You can't do that.
Well, they when you get that many people, you don't know everybody as good as you do in the small.
They don't have the family environment.
No.
Right.
You just don't know.
Reno had. And Black Rock and Imbo.
Yeah, it wasn't just Biggers. I mean, it's pretty much everybody that was in our conference.
Yeah.
I watch Highland play, but I don't know the parents of those kids.
Or most of the kids.
Yeah, any of the kids. I know them kind of, but they don't know me.
Right.
Yeah, I see them, and I know them when I see them, but they don't know me. At Biggers, you knew their kid, you knew the parents, you knew their grandparents.
Aunts and uncles and everybody else.
Yeah.
That's right.
I figure there's a lot of times that you had coached dad, and then you turn around and coach son too. I mean, I'm sure that happened a few times.
Yeah. I coached the kids I played with sons.
Mm-hmm.
I played with Daryl Haygood, and I coached his son. And there's probably some more.
Jim.
I coached Daryl. There's probably some more there, but I can't think of them right off. I played Ronnie Story was a year ahead of me, and of course I coached his son.
Kyle? Yeah.
Kyle, yeah.
Well, guys, I mean, I could sit here and talk to y'all all day because, this is family stuff to me. I got one last question, and then we'll wrap it up. I covered high school ball in my career for about 25 years. And when there were certain places I'd go to, and I'd get to talk to the coach ahead of time and everything, and they'd ask me, where I was from. And I'd always start with, well, you've probably never heard of it, little bitty town. And they're like, well, try me. And I'd tell them Biggers-Reyno. And they'd look at me like, well, yeah, I've heard of that. It's like, those Morrow boys. And it was the same thing. I mean, it didn't matter who the coach was I was talking to. That was the first name that come up. Did you know the Morrow boys? And then depending on who it was I was talking to, I might or might not tell them, but I was kin to y'all,
Yeah.
But
all them Morrow boys are in Kentucky.
Yeah. But they, that was all, and these were all the coaches at different places. I mean, you guys have quite the legacy that you've left because, we're talking about I've been covering high school ball since 99 was when I covered my first game all the way up through, and I still do some. But, if I had a chance to kind of small talk with a coach or, an admin or somebody, if I mentioned Biggers-Reyno, there's like, oh, yeah, I remember, and depending on their age, it might have been Jerry, it might have been Jay, or it might have been Ralph, But
well, I probably didn't know my name.
Yeah.
Because here's who I am. I'm not Ralph. I'm Rooster to a lot of them.
Right.
But here's who I really am. Oh, you're Jerry's little brother. Oh, you're JC's little brother. Mm-hmm. So I'm the little brother. Yeah.
But that name, it was synonymous when I would mention that I went to Biggers-Reyno, that would come up. And then the next thing they would say is, well, I was going to ask you if you played ball in high school, but if you went to Biggers, I know the answer to that. So,
and I want to say this before we quit. And JC and Jerry and I were all pretty good players at Biggers. Okay. And we had a lot of good players that came through Biggers, but we're in the
top 10
echelon.
I would say so. Yeah.
But our dad, we haven't talked any about Helen, our sister, our oldest sister. And I've heard Dad say this many times. She was the best darn bench warmer Biggers ever had.
Well, she never did get to play. She moved in when she was in 10th grade and hadn't never played any. Like I said, hadn't never been to a ball game.
Yeah.
But she was the best bench warmer Biggers ever had.
Had never been, and that's...
Well, actually, she played guard her senior year. She started.
For me to sit here, though, and think about, all the memories I have of games and stuff, and for her to have never been to a ball game, that's kind of mind-blowing to me.
We had never gone to a ball game.
When you moved
We
back.
lived in St. Louis. We had never gone to a ball game.
Never seen a live basketball game.
Seen a live basketball game.
And
Jerry was
I was in 8th grade.
8th grade. I was in the 5th grade, and Helen was...
She was a 10th grader.
10th grader. And we had never been to a live basketball game.
I got something I want to tell you here. We were over at Newark. Jim Eddington and I, we spent the week over there. And over there, they've got... what's them good players from Newark?
Oh, the Reeves?
It says Reeves auditorium, or Reed's Gymnasium.
Yeah.
And I told Jim, we were sitting there with somebody and talking to an old boy we knew, and I said, well, if Biggers still had a gym, we'd just put it up there. I said, we just put up there Eddington Gymnasium. And I said, that'd get all of us, wouldn't it? He said, yeah. He said, that'd get us all.
Yeah.
Eddington Gymnasium.
Well, guys, I appreciate this. Appreciate y'all coming in and letting me sit here and pick your brains about, you know, some of the best Biggers-Reyno teams that ever played. I mean, I know how much it all meant to y'all when you played and coached and worked there. And, you know, I never worked there, but I might as well have, because I was always going to be tied to it.
All your family worked there, didn't you?
I was about the only one in the family that didn't work there.
You was a Buffalo, wasn't you?
Yes, I was. I still am. Yeah. I always will be. That's something I'll take to my grave. Hey, guys, I enjoyed this.
Well, this has been a joy.
I'd heard some of these stories that we shared in the episode secondhand from my grandfather and my uncles and my parents, but this was the first time that I've had the opportunity to sit down directly with all three of these guys and just kind of pick their brain and ask questions and get their perspective on their playing days and their coaching days at Biggers-Reyno. I also learned some new stories I'd never heard. Never heard of the Bigger Swarm. Apparently that was a big deal for how tough of defense Biggers-Reyno played back when these guys were playing and coaching. And I know there are more stories like these at other schools that have been lost to consolidation. So if you're listening to this podcast and you know of a small school legend that needs to be featured on The Final Jump Shot, get on our Facebook page. Just go to Facebook and search for The Final Jump Shot. Leave us a message. Let us know who it is, where they played, and why you think they would be a perfect fit for an episode of The Final Jump Shot. I'll get it added to the list that just seems to be ever growing by the day. I can't thank people enough for reaching out to me and saying, hey, you need to talk to this person, you need to talk to this person, or you need to talk about this school. It's just been, the response has just been, continues to be overwhelming. And I truly thank every one of you for not only listening to the show, but being willing to give me ideas on where to take this in the future. Lastly, I want to thank Mike Thompson and First Horizon Bank in Pocahontas, Arkansas. He let us use the facility to record this episode with the Morrow brothers. I wanted this one to have a little more personal connection than just a phone call, for obvious reasons, multiple reasons on my front. And Mike came in clutch and allowed us to take over the conference room for a few hours and just sit back and talk and enjoy our time together. So I really appreciate Mike doing that for us. So that's going to put a wrap on this episode of the Final Jump Shot podcast. Appreciate everyone listening, and we'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Final Jump Shot, a Cam Productions podcast. Subscribe to The Final Jump Shot to ensure you never miss an episode.